Think about it. Every single night, you close your eyes, your body's right there in bed, but your mind? It goes somewhere else entirely, to worlds that can feel, really feel, more real than this one. So that begs the question, a massive one. Where does your consciousness actually go when you sleep?
All right, so let's get right into it. The easy answer, the scientific one, is that sleep is just for rest, for restoring your body. But if that's all it is, then why? Why does our mind create these elaborate worlds with full-on conversations and emotions that are just so incredibly vivid? We're going to dig into whether sleep is just downtime or if it's actually some kind of portal.
So to even begin to unpack this, we've got to look at the one place we're pretty sure consciousness hangs out, the brain. And what's wild is that it turns out our brain is leading this bizarre, super active, secret life the whole time we're asleep.
Just look at the difference here. When you're awake, it's your prefrontal cortex. That's the logical CEO part of your brain that's running the show. But the second you start dreaming, that part basically powers down. And your emotional and visual centers, they go into absolute overdrive. That's why dreams are so wild and emotionally intense. Your brain isn't resting at all. It's just completely shifting its focus inward.
And that intense inward focus, it might actually have a chemical trigger. Let me introduce you to DMT. It's an incredibly powerful psychedelic compound, famous for causing these really intense, otherworldly visions. And get this, your own brain produces it naturally.
Okay, so here's where it all connects. The theory is that our brains release this DMT right during REM sleep, when we're deep in dreamland. This could be the key. It could be the very thing that explains those bizarre landscapes and that deep, profound feeling you sometimes get from a dream. Think about that. Our dreams might literally be a natural psychedelic trip powered entirely by our own internal chemistry.
All right, if you thought that was strange, this is where things start to get really weird. Because once our consciousness slips into that dream state, the normal rules of our physical world, things we take for granted, like time and control, they start to bend in some pretty incredible ways.
You've had this happen, right? Those dreams that feel like they go on for days, maybe even a whole lifetime. And then you wake up and you realize only a few minutes have actually passed. That's not just in your head. It's a real phenomenon. It's called time dilation, and it's basically our internal clock just going completely haywire.
And this raises a massive question. If our consciousness can experience time in this stretched out, flexible way, then is time really the fixed, straight line we think it is? Or is it possible it's just a rule that only applies to our waking minds?
And it's not just time that gets warped. We could actually bend the rules of control, too. Lucid dreaming is the perfect example. It's that incredible moment where you're in a dream and suddenly you're dreaming. You wake up inside of it. And just like that, you can start to control what happens. This is huge because it proves that self-awareness, the very core of you, doesn't always just shut down when you go to sleep.
But what if we take it a step further? What if dreams don't just bend the rules, but completely shatter them? I'm talking about precognitive dreams. History's full of these stories. The most famous one has to be Abraham Lincoln. He apparently told his wife about this incredibly chilling and accurate dream he had of a president's funeral in the White House, just a few days before he was assassinated.
Now look, it's easy to just write these off as a coincidence, but when you hear how many of these accounts there are, you have to wonder, could sleep be a state where our consciousness just kind of untethers itself from the straight line of time, giving us these brief, totally bizarre glimpses of the future?
This is where we get into the really out there, and honestly, the most profound ideas about what sleep really is. What if dreams aren't just random firings in our brain? What if there's something more? Like a window into somewhere else entirely?
Okay, let's talk about one of the absolute most terrifying experiences a person can have, sleep paralysis. It all starts when you feel yourself wake up.
But you can't move. Your mind is wide awake, but your body is just completely frozen. You try to move, you try to scream, but nothing happens. You are totally trapped.
And that's when the real terror kicks in. This overwhelming, undeniable feeling that you are not alone in the room.
Okay, now this is where it gets genuinely weird. People from completely different cultures, all over the globe, who've had no contact with each other, they report seeing the exact same things. Shadowy figures, a crushing weight on their chest, a sense of some sinister presence. So, is it all just a weird glitch in the brain? Or
Is it possible it's a moment where the veil between worlds gets thin and we catch a glimpse of something we're not supposed to see?
To even explore that possibility, we need to dip our toes into a little quantum physics, specifically the multiverse theory. Now, this is the idea that there are an infinite number of parallel realities, all existing at the same time, right alongside ours.
So, let's connect the dots. What if those super detailed, weirdly consistent dream worlds you visit sometimes, what if they aren't just made up by your brain? What if they're real places? Could dreaming be our consciousness finding a way to take a quick peek into one of these countless other realities? I know, it's a wild idea, but it's also something that ancient cultures and spiritual traditions have believed for thousands of years.
Okay, so if our dreams can be this profound, this reality-bending, then why is it that they just seem to evaporate the second we open our eyes? Why do we forget almost all of them?
Well, there are basically two big theories here. The scientific explanation is pretty straightforward. The part of your brain that handles memory, the hippocampus, just works differently when you're asleep. Simple as that. But there's a more speculative idea, that it's a kind of protective filter, a mechanism to stop us from getting our dream life confused with our waking life.
Maybe we forget because some of these experiences are just too much. I mean, think about that old myth that if you die in a dream, you die in real life. It's totally not true, of course, but the feeling of it happening in a dream, that can feel unbelievably real and incredibly significant.
From a psychological perspective, dreaming about your own death isn't about literal death at all. It's seen as your mind's way of processing some kind of massive change. It's like the end of an old version of you to make room for the new one. It's basically a symbolic rehearsal for a huge transformation in your life.
So when you piece all of this together, the crazy brain chemistry, the way time gets warped, these glimpses into other states of being, one thing becomes crystal clear. Sleep isn't just about your body resting. It's a doorway, a portal to the deepest, weirdest, most mysterious corners of your own consciousness.
And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty mind-blowing thought. Every single night, for hours on end, our consciousness goes off and explores these realms where the laws of physics just don't seem to matter. So if it can do that when we're asleep, what does that tell us about what it's capable of when we're awake? Maybe the real mystery isn't where our consciousness goes when we sleep, but what consciousness itself truly is.